In today's guide, we'll be taking a look at how to successfully pull off an overtake. No more banging doors to make a move stick. After today's guide, you'll know how to successfully pull off an overtake. Fair and square. This video is broken down into different parts according to the difficulty of the techniques discussed. Feel free to jump to the part that is relevant to your needs, or watch the whole thing and get a reminder of the basics. My name is Scott, this is the Simracing Guide, and today everything you need to know about the sacred art of overtakes. Before attempting any kind of overtaking maneuvers, there's one crucial step that, if left undone, will ruin a lot of very easy overtakes. Working on the setup to your moves is a great way to improve your overtaking ability. And believe it or not, a lot of this work can be done even before the race starts. We already talked about how you can improve consistency and pace in previous episodes by consciously thinking about your practice time. But what I didn't mention is that while you're practicing, you can also try and think about possible overtaking spots on track. Think about the track layout, where you could potentially get past someone, where you could race side by side with your fellow competitor, and how that all affects your racing line. Racing against the AI can be beneficial in training this, but remember that the AI is often quite a bit more lenient on letting you pass than a real-life player. Think about how the AI squeezed you or how you squeeze them, and how a real person is gonna be affected by that. Also, try and rank in your head how likely it is that you can pull off a move in a certain corner, and whether a surprising attack that your opponent wouldn't exactly think about would affect your race. When you are the one planning an overtake, remember you are the chaser. You're hunting your prey. You're in charge, but that also means it's your responsibility to choose a safe overtaking spot. Don't expect to overtake within a couple of corners. Analyze who you're fighting to learn his driving style before going for your move. Try to think ahead of time. What will your opponent do in a certain situation? Does the car he is driving impact where you could go for a move? Think about the episode we did on knowing the cars you drive. Let's say you know your opposition is using a car that is fast on the straights, then you gotta be extra fast in the corners to counter them. Also, if you're chasing someone long enough, they will make mistakes, as it's much more difficult to set the pace than to follow someone along. Look out for those mistakes from opponents rather than to force a move. In a majority of cases, that's how a position is gained. It's extremely easy to start acting entitled when you're chasing someone that is slower than you, trying to set up an overtake. Which is frankly kinda weird, because results of a race are determined for 90% in qualifying. So as long as you did your job in qualifying, you should be around the place that you deserve to be in, and around people of your own skill group. And if not, well, people are still gonna assume you are, so act cool even if you have a huge pace advantage. My advice to you is to act as if you were dealing with backmarkers in an endurance race. Just be calm and wait for the right opportunity. My last tip for a nicely set up move is to always make your intentions clear. No half moves from any students of mine. Make sure that there's enough room, and if not, well, try again next time. Make sure you enjoy the challenge and be happy that you're actually racing someone instead of being all the way at the front or at the back racing on your own. Have fun, but be safe, and remember the phrase, he who wants to finish first has to finish. Whether you are a beginner sim racer or a seasoned veteran, throughout your sim racing career, you will always want to prioritize straight line overtakes. This seems like a logical concept now I'm laying it out, but in the heat of the action, you're not always thinking straight. See what I did there? Anyway, make sure to always remember this simple truth, whether you're overtaking a backmarker or a direct rival. Not only will this minimize the risk when performing the overtake, but it will also be a lot easier for you. So if you're on the track and you know there's a massive straight coming up, then just wait a little bit before doing your overtake, plan your move, and then get an easy overtake done on the straight. Actually, scrap that. Always wait a little bit, because When you're performing overtakes, patience is key in a lot of occasions. A straight line overtake requires a sufficiently long straight, often preceded by a slow corner. These two factors will be more or less important depending on the car class you're driving in. Either way, if you are close enough to the rival in front, you should be able to tuck in the slipstream, use that as a speed advantage and get safely past your rival. Once the overtake is done, make sure to go over to a more defensive style of driving straight away if you don't want to be re-overtaken. This is especially important on tracks where two straights follow closely behind each other. If that's the case, sometimes it's even better to wait for the overtake and do it on the second straight. We'll take a look at defensive strategies in the future, but for now, remember you want to defend the inside line into a corner. Of course, not all tracks are built the same, and sometimes you'll need to be a bit more creative if you want to get the move done. When you're trying to overtake into a corner, you should always strive to take that inside line. This both because it's going to give you an easier way past, but also because it will give you a greater chance to get that overtake done. This can be explained by the fact that when you take the inside line, you are going to travel a much shorter distance through that corner. But as is often the case, in life, any action will have both advantages and disadvantages. Since you're covering off the inside to the corner and don't want to plow into the car you're racing with, you'll probably have to brake quite a bit earlier than what you're used to and take an earlier apex than for the ideal racing line. This will greatly reduce your cornering speed and might even affect your corner exit. By the way, make sure to always lever the space when you're fighting another car on track. We wouldn't want to be racing unfairly or get a penalty for a move we did. And if you need a reminder on the rules of racing, well, I made a video on it, so check it out. Something that isn't such a hard rule but is definitely frowned upon as per its aggressive nature are dive bombs. When we talk about dive bombs, we're looking at moves that are made in the braking zone, while the overtaking driver is more than a car length behind the car being overtaken. The way a dive bomb is achieved is by braking much later than your opposition. This has the effect of forcing the other driver to yield more room than would normally be required of him to let you complete your move. Dive bombs are quite selfish because of that reason, and it will in fact piss off more than one driver. Dive bombs place a lot of responsibility to avoid a crash on the defending driver, and honestly, they are probably the riskiest moves you can do in racing. Brake a tad too late and that's you crashing into the other driver if they don't react quick enough. So just to recap, taking the inside line through the corner is going to force us to trade in some cornering speed for a shorter way through the corner. This will make it much easier for us to get past the opposition, but that will also mean that defending drivers will try as hard as they can to protect that inside line. Which brings us to the next subject of this video. Outside moves are as impressive as they are difficult. To successfully pull off an outside move, you need to perfectly manage the extra speed you can carry through a larger radius around the corner, and this on a part of the track that might not even be as grippy as you'd want it to be. In most cases, standalone corners will not allow for an outside move, unless you have a big base advantage. Either you are a much more skilled driver than the car in front, or you have the car advantage. But even then, the other driver will definitely not expect it, and that makes both for a good tactical move, but also increases the risks to the overtake. Where outside moves are increasingly useful, however, is in sections where an outside line turns into the inside of the next corner. Think about chicanes or flowing sections where the corners feed into each other. A driver starting on the outside, granted he carries enough speed to keep his car alongside, can make a move happen in subsequent changes of direction. Finally, we can't talk about outside moves without mentioning switchbacks. Basically, depending on your opponent's car placement, you might get the opportunity to transfer an outside move into an inside move. If the other car hits an early apex and carries a wider line through the corner, a door opens for you to hit a late apex and get a better exit. This strategy requires a very low cornering speed as well as a lot of turning input to catch your opponent off guard. Finally, let's look into the real expert stuff. When you're able to apply all the basic moves of overtaking while showing enough awareness of the cars around, you'll see that experience plays a great role in how smooth an overtake can be. Experience improves your instincts and focus, allowing you to gauge the risk better and faster. Keeping your focus on the important stuff in stressful situations is certainly very helpful in that regard. You wouldn't believe how many times I've forgotten a breaking point by being so focused on a fight that I forgot to keep my driving in check as well. But the most difficult aspect of racing is to know when to attack and when you should probably back off. This instinct gets better over time and can be trained by doing a lot of race starts, for example. At no time in the race will you have to deal with so many factors at once in such close proximity to others. Your tires will also probably be cold and you might even have to get into your rhythm at this point. Race starts are one of the most crucial moments in the race where you can easily win or lose a lot of positions. So it's important to learn how to deal with them. Try keeping your cool and don't pressure yourself to gain loads of position on the opening lap. Like we said earlier, if you qualified well enough, you should be around people of your skill level, and if not, you should be able to pick positions up pretty easily on the following laps, so no need to increase the risk in such high pressure situation. Another concept that will become easier the more experience you gather is the idea of spontaneous overtaking moves. What I mean by this are moves that happen without actual planning. I know earlier we talked about planning overtakes to avoid making mistakes, but sometimes the opposition just hands you unthinkable opportunities. If an opponent makes a mistake, whether that be a strategic one, by not defending the inside line, or just a silly mistake by straight up missing the corner, you should rely solely on instinct to know if this opens up a door for you. Be extremely careful in those situations, as you can emerge a hero by making use of someone else's mistake, but if you misread the situation, you'll just look like a fool that was way too aggressive. When you think about it, gauging when to overtake all comes down to judging the risk-reward scenario. This is where the overall race strategy comes into play, as attacking on lap 1 will be vastly different from attacking or defending on the last lap of the race. The type of racing also plays a role, as endurance and sprint races should also be approached with a completely different mentality. You'll see that competitive racing will push you to the limits of your ability, and that is why next week we'll take a look at advanced car control and how you can avoid those pesky spins when you do push it over the limit. Make sure to smash that like button for the effort it took to make this video, subscribe to the channel not to miss any of the future episodes, make sure to get loads of practice before the next one coming next Tuesday. You can also take a look at additional resources in the description down below if you do need them, and I'll see you space racers in the next one. Goodbye.